Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another... Today, we're looking at Elon Musk and, well, how should I put this? His ever-expanding empire, I guess.
Empire. Yeah, that's one way to put it.
We're going to be pulling from a recent Forbes article, really interesting stuff that kind of charts his growing influence. And it's not just about his companies, it's like, how's his approach, his whole style, impacting things way beyond just business, even into, like, government, right?
Right, right. And one of the big things the article highlights is this concept of, well, they call it his bottleneck philosophy.
Mm.
And it's kind of key to understanding, I think, how Elon tackles pretty much any problem.
Bottleneck, huh?
Yeah, bottleneck. Think of it this way, like you're on a highway, right?
Huh.
Traffic zooming along, and then bam, it all jams up because it narrows down to one lane.
Oh, okay, I get it.
That's the bottleneck. And what Elon believes, fundamentally, is that you got to find those constraints, those points where things just, like, grind to a halt. And once you identify them, eliminate them. That's how you make real progress fast.
So it's not about like big sweeping changes. It's more about those little, I guess you could say pressure points.
Exactly. Those seemingly small but critical things that can hold everything back.
Interesting. And this Forbes article, it came out February 12th, 2025, by the way, gives us some really fresh examples of this whole bottleneck thing in action. And they jump right in with some breaking news. Elon's made a bid, like a massive bid, $97.4 billion to buy OpenAI.
Yeah, and this isn't your average acquisition. This is like a total power play. You've got Elon on one side, and then you got Sam Altman, OpenAI's CEO, on the other. And what's hanging in the balance? The future of AI, no less.
OpenAI, for those who might not know, they're the ones behind ChatGPT.
That's right, that AI tool that's been, it's shaking things up everywhere you look. Customer service, writing, you name it.
Wow, so the stakes are like seriously high with this whole OpenAI thing.
Oh, absolutely.
But okay, so that's all happening in the tech world. But get this, something completely unexpected went down on, well, the political front, I guess you'd say.
Oh, yeah, this is a curveball.
Elon has taken on a new role. Get this. Head of the Department of Government Efficiency.
DOGE, that's what they're calling it.
DOGE for short.
Yeah, DOGE.
I mean, who saw that coming?
Right. Like Elon Musk running a government department.
Total wild card. Now, DOGE, it was actually created by President Trump back in 2025, and their whole thing is to bring, like, that Silicon Valley energy, that whole ethos of disrupt, disrupt, disrupt to, well, government. Which, let's be honest, can be kind of slow and clunky, right? To say the least.
Yeah. But there's a quote in the article. It's from Mark Andreessen. He's a venture capitalist who's worked with Elon. And he says Elon's got this, and I'm quoting here, unique ability to identify bottlenecks in complex systems and eliminate them.
He sounds impressed.
Yeah, and Andreessen goes on to say that, Elon isn't just some delegator. He really gets in the weeds, the technical weeds, to understand, like, the core of the problem.
So he's hands-on, even with something as big as, like, government.
Oh, yeah, that's the thing. And this is actually like a pattern with him. If you look back at Tesla, which the article brings this up as like the prime example of how Elon operates.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Tesla is the top dog in electric vehicles now, right?
Yeah.
But what's really interesting is how they got there.
And they actually go into detail about that, about the, wasn't it called production hell or something like that?
Oh, yeah, production hell, that's what they called it. It was back at their Fremont factory, and they were just struggling to keep up with demand. Cars were, like, piling up. Parts were missing. It was a mess.
Yeah, I remember reading about that.
And what did Elon do? He didn't sit in some ivory tower pointing fingers. He moved into a tent.
Whoa.
Right there on the factory floor.
Wow, seriously?
No, seriously. He lived there, basically. So he could figure out exactly what was going wrong. What were the bottlenecks holding them back?
And that's where the whole bottleneck idea comes into play, right?
Exactly.
Huh.
It wasn't about some grand vision. It was about finding those seemingly small but critical points of failure. And then, just solving them, often in, like, really unconventional ways.
Yeah.
He wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty, and that's how they turned Tesla around.
So now he's bringing that same, I don't know, that same energy, that same approach to DOGE. And it's interesting, the article mentions he's already laser focused on what he sees as, like, inefficiencies in how the government runs, pushing for transparency, especially where it comes to spending, like salaries and stuff.
Yeah, transparency is a big thing for him.
And in fact, he even posted on X, I think it was, where he said, quote, taxpayers have a right to know exactly how their money is being spent.
Mm-hmm. So you can see that, like, that same thinking from the factory floor, he's taking that to government now. Accountability, streamlined processes, the whole 9 yards.
Which is, it's got to be a huge change from how things are usually done, right?
Oh, completely. But I mean, that's kind of classic Elon, isn't it? Bold moves, shake things up.
Totally. But it's not just about, like, fixing earthly things for him. The article also dives into his other ventures, particularly SpaceX, and his ambitions. I mean, they go way beyond Earth.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. SpaceX is like a whole other level. I mean, reusable rockets, slashing launch costs, Starlink giving, like global internet access. The goals are like out of this world, literally.
Actually, pun intended, right.
Right. But what sets SpaceX apart, and the article makes this point really well, is their obsession with constant improvement. They're always tweaking, always iterating, finding ways to do things faster, cheaper, more efficiently.
And then there's Twitter, which, well, it's X now, right? That's been a whole roller coaster since he took over.
Yeah, lots of ups and downs there for sure.
But even with all the changes, the article argues there's this consistent pattern. Identify the inefficiencies, make radical changes, and then see what happens.
Measure the results.
Exactly. And whether you agree with how he does things or not, you can't deny he's shaking things up.
That's for sure.
So Tesla, SpaceX, X, even government now, it's like this consistent theme. Find the bottlenecks, find those points of friction, and then just attack them head on. And as we go deeper into this article, we're going to see how this philosophy, this way of thinking, extends to his other, I guess, less well-known ventures, like the Boring Company, Neuralink. It's really fascinating stuff.
Oh, definitely. And speaking of pushing boundaries,
Yeah.
right, like Elon's ventures, they're not just limited to Earth or even like the digital world.
You're talking about the Boring Company.
Exactly, the Boring Company, with their whole focus on tunnels, underground tunnels for like city transportation.
Yeah, it always seemed like a kind of quirky side project to me, you know?
I know what you mean, but it's another example of this bottleneck thinking.
How so?
Think about it. Traffic, it's a huge problem in cities, right? I mean, everyone complains about it.
Oh, yeah, gridlock, rush hour, the whole 9 yards.
And Elon sees that, those traffic jams, as like literal bottlenecks.
Ah.
So his solution, bypass the whole mess with tunnels underground, vehicles zipping around under the city, no more gridlock.
Makes sense when you put it like that, but it's pretty radical, right?
Oh, absolutely. But that's the thing. He's not just talking about it. They're actually doing it.
Right.
The Boring Company, they've already got tunnels up and running in Las Vegas.
Oh, right, I'd heard about that.
And they're going for more, actively pursuing projects in other cities too. It's ambitious, no doubt, but it fits with his whole approach, right? Find a problem, an inefficiency, and then come up with a totally innovative solution.
Yeah, no more traffic jams. That would definitely be innovative.
Right. And then there's Neuralink, which is, well, I'd say it's probably his most ambitious and maybe controversial venture so far.
Neuralink, the brain-computer interface thing, right?
That's the one. And their goal, it's pretty wild when you think about it. They want to help people who are paralyzed regain control of their limbs, even restore lost senses.
That sounds, I mean, it sounds like something out of a movie.
I know, right?
Yeah.
But it's getting real. They just hit a big milestone, the article talks about this, where they did their first implant, like a Neuralink implant, in a human patient.
Wow.
It's incredible to think about the possibilities. People with spinal cord injuries walking again, people who are blind being able to see. I mean, it could totally revolutionize healthcare.
But it's also, well, it's kind of freaky, right? Like messing with the human brain.
Yeah, no doubt. And the article brings up those concerns too, the ethical questions, the whole thing about merging our brains with technology.
Yeah, there's got to be a lot to consider there.
Totally. They talk about how, as this technology develops, we need careful oversight. We got to think through the implications. But at the same time, the article also highlights Elon's belief that this Neuralink has the potential to help people, like on a massive scale,
Yeah.
to really alleviate suffering.
Okay, so we've got electric cars, space travel, brain implants, and now he's taking on the U.S. government. I mean, does it ever end with this guy? Can he really do it all? Can his approach, this whole bottleneck thing, actually work on something as, well, as huge and messy as the government?
It's a big question, right? And the article, they actually dig into that because some critics, they say he's spread too thin, trying to do too much at once. And they point to, how things can get chaotic at his company sometimes as proof that his methods, well, maybe they're not sustainable.
I mean, there's definitely a sense of, like, urgency with him, right? Everything's got to be done yesterday. Does he ever slow down, ever get burnt out?
Even people who know him well, they don't seem to have a clear answer to that.
Yeah.
But he definitely operates at like a different level than most people, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And what the article suggests is that maybe the reason he can keep up this pace is because, well, he really gets the tech. Like deep down, he's not just a CEO, he's an engineer
Yeah.
at heart. And that lets him connect with these problems understand them at a really fundamental level.
So he's not just delegating, he's actually getting down into the nuts and bolts, figuring things out himself.
Exactly. And that, combined with his focus on those bottlenecks, the article argues that that's what lets him juggle all these different things at once. He knows where to focus his energy, where his involvement can have the biggest impact.
But can anyone, even Elon Musk, keep that up forever? I mean, there's only so much time in a day, right?
That's the big question, isn't it? And the article, it doesn't try to give a simple answer. It lays out both sides. Like, yeah, there's a risk of burnout. There's always the question of, is it good to have so much power concentrated in one person? But then it also points to what he's actually achieved. I mean, Tesla, they're dominating the electric car market. SpaceX, they're pushing the boundaries of space exploration. And now maybe DOGE is going to shake up the government. It's hard to argue with those results.
No, you're right. The results are there. But I still think it's important to think about the downsides, too. What if this level of influence, this power, goes unchecked? What about the ethical stuff, like with Neuralink? It could have a huge impact on, our privacy, our autonomy.
Oh, those are crucial questions, and we need to be asking them as a society.
Mhm.
The article doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but it makes it clear that we need to be thinking critically, questioning assumptions, considering all the different angles.
So it's not enough to just follow along. We have to engage, really think about what all this means.
Exactly.
So if we're looking ahead, what's next for Elon? What's next for his empire?
Well, the article kind of paints this picture of the future that's both exciting and honestly kind of unnerving. Tesla's pushing ahead with their robot project, Optimus.
Robots, seriously.
Yep, robots. They could end up doing all sorts of things, from manufacturing to healthcare. And then SpaceX, their sights are set on Mars, like actually setting up a permanent human colony on Mars. In X, they're turning it into what Elon calls an everything app. Social media, financial stuff, even government interactions, all in one place.
I can't even imagine.
And then there's DOGE, still working to streamline the government, maybe saving taxpayers tons of money. It's a lot to take in, and it makes you wonder, where are we headed? Are we comfortable with one person having so much influence, so much power? And what are the consequences, good and bad, of all this?
Those are some big questions.
They are, and I think it's on all of us to think about them, to wrestle with them.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Elon Musk, into his world, what are the key takeaways here? What do we need to be thinking about as this whole story unfolds?
I think the biggest thing is that we're in the middle of a huge shift, a shift in how power works, how influence works in the 21st century.
Yeah.
Technology is playing a bigger and bigger role, and people like Elon Musk, they're the ones shaping things. They've got the vision, the tech skills, the drive, and they're changing the world in ways we're just starting to understand.
It's not just about the companies, it's about his whole approach, that bottleneck philosophy, right?
Exactly. And love him or hate him, and there's plenty of people on both sides. He's pushing boundaries, making us rethink what's possible, and that forces us to ask some really tough questions about, what kind of future we want.
And that's what we want to leave you with today. It's kind of wild, isn't it? All this stuff with Elon Musk, it's like we're living in some, sci-fi movie.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast things are changing, right? And it's not just tech evolving on its own. It's people like Elon actively pushing things forward, like they're trying to will the future into existence.
And it's clear from the article, he's not just in it for the money. I mean, he's talking about colonizing Mars, fixing energy problems, making sure humanity survives, long term. It's kind of, I don't know, almost messianic.
There's definitely an element of that, yeah. And I think that's part of why he's such a controversial figure. Some people, they see him as this visionary, this genius who's going to save us all. But then others, they see him as this reckless, egomaniac, someone who's messing with forces he doesn't understand.
Yeah, I can see both sides, honestly. I mean, he's done some amazing things, with the electric cars, SpaceX.
Yeah.
But then there's the whole, too much power in one person's hands thing, the risks, the ethical questions, especially with Neuralink.
You got to weigh it all, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what a deep dive like this is all about. It's not about picking a side. It's about understanding all the different angles, the complexities. It's complicated,
Yeah, totally. So it's not enough to just know, the basic facts about what he's doing. We got to think about the bigger picture, the implications.
Absolutely. We need to be asking ourselves, as individuals, as a society, what kind of future are we building? What role do we want tech to play? How do we balance progress with, doing things ethically? These are tough questions, but we can't just ignore them.
And the article, it ends on this kind of, I guess, cautiously optimistic note. Yeah, there are risks with how Elon does things, but his drive, his ambition, it could also lead to like huge breakthroughs that benefit everyone.
It's a tightrope walk, that's for sure. And
Yeah.
we all got to figure out how to navigate it because the future's coming, whether we're ready or not. It's up to us to like engage with it, think critically, be responsible.
Some heavy stuff to think about. Well, I think we've really dug into this whole Elon Musk thing today. Went way beyond just the headlines, right? His influence, his bottleneck philosophy, how his companies could impact, well, everything, really.
It's been a great conversation, and hopefully it's given you, the listener, some things to think about too.
And we always like to leave you with a little something to ponder, right? So here's something to chew on. Is Elon Musk a force for good? Or is he a disruptor who sometimes maybe takes things too far? Or is he a little bit of both? And what role do you want to play in this future that's unfolding? It's your role too, you know?
Don't be afraid to ask the tough questions. Keep digging, keep learning, and stay curious.
That's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for being here with us. And until next time, keep exploring.